The nurse was still wiping tears from my face when my phone started vibrating on the hospital tray beside me. I had just spent 14 exhausting hours in labor. My newborn daughter was sleeping peacefully in my arms. The room smelled like disinfectant and fresh hospital linens. Machines beeped softly around me. I should have been experiencing the happiest moment of my life. Instead, my world shattered. My sister picked up my phone and glanced at the screen, then her face went pale. "Emily!" Something in her voice made my stomach tighten. "What is it?" She looked at me, then back at the phone. Finally, she whispered the words that changed everything. "Your husband filed for divorce." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was impossible. "What?" She slowly handed me the phone. There it was, an email notification from the county court. Petitioner, Michael Carter. Respondent, Emily Carter. Marriage dissolution filing filed 2 hours ago. 2 hours, while I was screaming through contractions. While doctors fought to keep my blood pressure under control. While I was bringing our daughter into the world, my husband was filing for divorce. I felt the room spin. The baby stirred gently in my arms. "No." My voice barely came out. "No, this has to be a mistake." But deep down, I already knew it wasn't, because for months something had been wrong, something Michael desperately didn't want me to discover. And before this nightmare was over, a judge would reveal a secret so shocking that it would destroy everything he had built. For several minutes, I couldn't stop staring at the screen. The words refused to make sense. Marriage dissolution filing, petitioner Michael Carter, my husband, the man who had kissed my forehead before I was taken into the delivery room, the man who had promised we'd face everything together, the father of the little girl sleeping peacefully in my arms. My husband had filed for divorce while I was giving birth. My sister Rachel grabbed a chair and sat beside me. "Emily," I looked at her. My vision was blurry from tears. "I don't understand." Neither did she, and honestly neither would anyone else, because just 3 days earlier, Michael had been talking about baby names and painting the nursery. 3 days earlier, he had been acting like a devoted husband. Nothing about this made sense. Then my phone rang. "Michael," my heart started pounding. Rachel looked at the screen. "Don't answer." But I did. The moment I picked up, I heard his voice, calm, almost rehearsed. "Emily!" I couldn't believe it. "How could you?" Silence, then a long sigh. "It's complicated." I laughed through my tears. "Complicated?" My voice cracked. "I almost died giving birth to our daughter. Emily, and while I was in labor, you filed for divorce." The silence on the other end felt endless. Finally he spoke. "I'm sorry." Sorry, that was all he had. Sorry, not an explanation, not the truth, just one pathetic word. "What happened?" I whispered. For a moment, I thought he might actually tell me. Instead, he said something strange, something that made no sense. "You should ask your father." I froze. "My father?" "Yes." What does that mean? But he had already hung up, leaving me with more questions than answers. 2 days later, I was discharged from the hospital. Instead of returning home as a family, Rachel drove me and my newborn daughter to my parents' house outside Denver. The entire ride felt surreal. I sat in the back seat beside the baby carrier, watching rain slide down the windows, trying to understand what had happened. My father, Robert, met us at the front door. The moment he saw me crying, his expression changed. Concern, guilt, fear. Something was wrong, very wrong. That evening, after the baby finally fell asleep, I sat across from him at the kitchen table. "Tell me the truth." His face tightened. "Dad." He looked away. "Michael said I should ask you." The room became silent. My mother stopped washing dishes. Rachel looked up from the couch. Everyone suddenly looked uncomfortable. My stomach dropped. "You know something." My father slowly lowered his eyes, and in that moment I realized he did. The next words out of his mouth changed everything. "There's something I've never told you." My chest tightened. "What?" He rubbed his hands together nervously. Then he spoke. 28 years ago, your grandfather created a trust." I frowned. "A trust?" He nodded. I already knew about my grandfather's business. What I didn't know was that he had established a protected family trust worth millions. Millions. I stared at him. "What does that have to do with Michael?" My father's expression darkened because Michael recently found out about it. The room felt smaller, warmer, harder to breathe in. Suddenly, pieces started falling into place. Michael's strange behavior, his sudden distance, the divorce, the timing, but something still didn't fit. If he found out about money, why divorce me? My father looked devastated. Then he answered, because he thought divorcing you before certain paperwork was finalized would help him claim part of the trust. My jaw dropped. For several seconds, I couldn't even speak. He thought the trust belonged to me directly. He thought there was a loophole. He thought he could get rich. And apparently he was willing to destroy our family trying. The betrayal hit harder than ever. Not because of the money, because of what it revealed. My husband hadn't left because he stopped loving me. He left because he wanted something he believed he could take. The next morning brought another shock. A lawyer arrived at my parents' house. Not my lawyer, Michael's lawyer. He handed me documents requesting immediate financial disclosures. The arrogance was unbelievable. I had given birth less than a week earlier. Yet Michael was already trying to access information about assets, trusts, accounts, property. Rachel looked ready to throw him off the porch. Instead, I calmly accepted the envelope. Because something had changed inside me. The heartbreak was still there. But now anger was growing, and anger can become strength. That same afternoon, I hired an attorney named Rebecca Lawson. She listened carefully, reviewed the documents, then smiled, not because the situation was funny, because Michael had made a serious mistake, a very serious mistake.
One that would eventually bring all of his secrets into the open. And hidden among those secrets was something nobody expected.
Not me. Not my family.
Not even Michael himself. A secret so explosive that when it finally surfaced in court, the judge would stop the hearing and stare directly at my husband. And what happened next would leave the entire courtroom speechless. 2 months later, the divorce case officially reached court. By then, my daughter, Lily, was finally sleeping through most nights. I was still exhausted, still healing, still trying to accept that the man I married had chosen greed over his family. But at least I was no longer confused, or so I thought, because the biggest shock was still ahead. The courtroom felt cold that morning. Michael sat at the opposite table beside his attorney. For a moment, I barely recognized him. The warm smile I once loved was gone. His face looked tense, nervous, almost desperate. Rebecca noticed it too. He's scared. I looked at her. Why? She closed her folder. Because people only panic when they know the truth might come out. At the time, I thought she was talking about the trust. I was wrong. Very wrong. The hearing began normally. Financial disclosures, property records, account statements, hours of paperwork, hours of testimony. The judge listened patiently, occasionally asking questions, occasionally making notes. Everything seemed straightforward. Then Rebecca stood up. Your Honor, we'd like to introduce new evidence. Immediately, Michael's attorney objected. The judge allowed it anyway. Rebecca walked toward the clerk, handed over several documents, then returned to her seat. I watched Michael. For the first time, genuine fear appeared on his face. Not concern.
Fear.
My stomach tightened. What did Rebecca know? Because she hadn't told me everything. Not yet. The first surprise involved money. A lot of money. Over the previous weeks, Rebecca's investigators had discovered several hidden bank accounts. Accounts Michael never disclosed. Accounts containing tens of thousands of dollars. Money he claimed didn't exist. The judge looked unimpressed. Michael looked trapped. His attorney looked miserable. But that wasn't the real bombshell. Not even close. Then Rebecca presented travel records, hotel reservations, credit card statements, private purchases. And suddenly the affair came into focus. Michael hadn't merely been cheating. He had been financially supporting another woman for nearly a year, using marital funds. While I was pregnant, gasps spread through the courtroom. My chest tightened. Even though I already knew about the affair, seeing proof hurt. Seeing dates hurt. Seeing the timeline hurt. While I was attending doctor appointments. While I was preparing for our daughter's arrival. while I was fighting pregnancy complications. Michael had been spending weekends with someone else. The betrayal felt fresh all over again. But somehow, the worst part still hadn't arrived. During a recess, Rebecca finally pulled me aside. Her expression was serious. "There's something else." Immediately, my heart sank. "What?" She hesitated. That scared me even more. Then she handed me another file. I opened it. Inside were corporate records, business registrations, investment documents. At first, none of it made sense. Then I saw a familiar name. The woman Michael had been seeing, Vanessa Brooks. I frowned. What am I looking at? Rebecca took a deep breath. Michael wasn't trying to get part of the trust. I stared at her. What? He was trying to avoid another problem. My pulse quickened. What problem? Rebecca pointed at a document.
Debt.
Massive debt. Far larger than anyone knew. Over $200,000. Failed investments. Business losses. Personal loans. Credit obligations. My hands started shaking. Everything suddenly clicked. The affair. The divorce. The timing.
The trust.
Michael wasn't leaving because he wanted freedom. He was drowning financially. And he thought money could save him. But even that wasn't the biggest secret. Because hidden among those documents was one final discovery. One that nobody expected. Not even Rebecca. When court resumed, the judge reviewed additional evidence. Then something unusual happened. Very unusual. The judge stopped speaking.
Completely.
He stared at one particular document for nearly 30 seconds. The courtroom became silent. Everyone noticed. Everyone waited. Then the judge slowly looked up, directly at Michael. "Mr. Carter." Michael swallowed. "Yes, Your Honor." The judge removed his glasses. "What exactly were you planning to do with this?" The room felt frozen. Michael's face turned pale. I had never seen him look like that before. Not once. The judge held up a document. A document that investigators had uncovered only days earlier. A forged financial declaration. One Michael had prepared before filing for divorce. The document falsely claimed certain trust assets belonged to him. It wasn't just inaccurate. It was intentionally misleading. The courtroom erupted with whispers. The judge immediately called for order. Then he looked back at Michael. Disappointment filled his face. Not anger. Disappointment, which somehow felt worse. For several moments, nobody spoke. Then Michael did something I never expected. He lowered his head and admitted everything. The affair, the hidden debt, the lies, the manipulation, the attempt to use the divorce to gain financial leverage. Everything, right there in open court. I sat frozen. Part of me wanted to cry. Part of me wanted to scream. But mostly I felt exhausted. Because after months of lies, the truth was finally standing in the open. And it was uglier than I imagined. The judge's final ruling would change all of our lives. But before that happened, one last twist would emerge. A twist connected to my late grandfather's trust. A twist that would completely rewrite the ending of this story. And when the truth finally surfaced, even Michael couldn't believe what happened next. The courtroom was completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the judge seemed stunned by what had just happened. Michael sat with his head lowered, his shoulders slumped. The confident man who had filed for divorce while I was giving birth had disappeared. Now he looked like someone watching his entire life collapse in real time. And honestly, that's exactly what was happening. But there was still one final issue to address.
The trust.
The very thing Michael believed would make him rich. The very thing that had started this nightmare. The judge opened another folder, then looked toward the trustee managing my grandfather's estate. "Please explain this to the court." An older man named William Parker stood. For years, William had managed the trust created by my grandfather. Calmly, he adjusted his glasses. Then he began speaking. And within minutes, the entire courtroom realized Michael had made a catastrophic mistake. The trust wasn't what Michael thought it was. Not even close. For months, he had believed the assets belonged directly to me. He believed divorcing me before certain paperwork was finalized would somehow help him gain access to future distributions. But that wasn't how the trust worked. Not at all. William explained everything. The trust assets were protected. They were not marital property. They could not be divided in divorce. They could not be transferred. They could not be claimed by a spouse. And then came the final revelation, one that changed everything. My grandfather had included a specific clause years earlier, a clause designed to protect future beneficiaries from financial exploitation. If a beneficiary's spouse attempted fraud, coercion, or manipulation regarding trust assets, additional protections automatically activated. The judge read the clause carefully, then looked at Michael. The meaning was clear. His own actions had triggered the protections. The very scheme he believed would make him wealthy had accomplished the exact opposite. The courtroom became silent again. Michael looked completely stunned, as if he had just realized he had destroyed his marriage for absolutely nothing. Then William revealed one final surprise. A surprise even I didn't know existed. Several years before his death, my grandfather had created a separate educational trust for future descendants, including children born after his death, including Lily. Tears immediately filled my eyes. The trust would help pay for education, medical needs, future opportunities. It wasn't about luxury. It was about security, about family, about protecting future generations. Exactly the kind of thing my grandfather would have wanted. I looked down at the photograph of Lily inside my purse, and suddenly I felt closer to him than I had in years. Even after he was gone, he was still taking care of us. When the hearing finally ended, the judge delivered his ruling. Michael's attempts to conceal assets were formally documented. Financial penalties were imposed. Additional legal fees were assigned. And most importantly, the court protected Lily's interests completely. Justice didn't arrive dramatically. There was no cheering, no applause, no movie-style speech. Just truth,
Facts.
consequences, real life. Sometimes that's what justice looks like. Outside the courthouse, reporters weren't waiting. Nobody made headlines. Nobody became famous. But for me, it felt like the most important day of my life. Because I finally knew the truth. Not just about Michael. About myself. For months, I had blamed myself. Wondered what I missed. Wondered what I could have done differently. Wondered if I had somehow caused the collapse of my marriage. Now I knew better. Michael's choices belonged to Michael. His affair.
His lies.
His greed. His decisions. None of those things were my fault. And accepting that truth felt like freedom. Over the next year, life slowly became beautiful again. Not perfect. Beautiful. There is a difference. Lily grew stronger every day. Her first laugh. Her first word. Her first steps. Each milestone reminded me that life keeps moving forward. Even after heartbreak. Even after betrayal. I returned to work. Spent time with friends. Started therapy. Built new routines. Created a new future. One that wasn't based on fear. Or lies. Or someone else's choices. Michael eventually apologized. Not once. Many times. The first few apologies felt hollow. Like someone trying to escape guilt. But over time, they changed. Became more honest. More sincere. One afternoon, nearly 2 years later, we sat together at a park while Lily played nearby. He watched her run across the grass. Then quietly said, "I traded my family for an illusion." I looked at him. For the first time, I believed he truly understood. The money, the affair, the lies. None of it had given him what he wanted. Instead, it cost him everything that mattered. Sometimes karma doesn't arrive as punishment. Sometimes karma arrives as understanding, as realizing exactly what you've lost, and having to live with it. On Lily's 3rd birthday, our backyard was full of laughter. Family.
Friends.
Children. Balloons floated in the warm summer air. As I watched my daughter blow out her candles, I felt tears gathering in my eyes. Not because I was sad, because I was grateful. I remembered the hospital room, the divorce papers, the betrayal, the fear, the uncertainty. I remembered believing my life was ending, but it wasn't. It was beginning. My husband filed for divorce while I was giving birth. He thought he had discovered a shortcut to wealth. Instead, A judge revealed his secret. A secret built on lies, debt, deception, and greed. And in the end, the truth won. Not because life is always fair, but because truth has a way of surviving. Even when people try desperately to hide it. Michael lost the marriage he took for granted. I gained something far more valuable.
Peace.
Freedom. And the chance to raise my daughter in a life built on honesty. Looking back now, I realized something important. The greatest inheritance my grandfather ever left me wasn't money. It was the strength to walk away from people who didn't value me. And that gift changed my life forever.